Um, Thanks for joining us today. We're really excited about the Creative Green Adaptation Awards. We had just an amazing response to our call for stories about the adaptations that different organizations are making. This webinar today is in both has French and Spanish interpretation available. Please go down to the little globe at the bottom of your screen and click on your preferred language so that you can hear the interpretation for those languages. We also would love it if you would put your name, organization, and where you're joining us from today in the chat, just in the chat box, just so we can get a sense of who is here. And finally, we wanted to encourage people to use the Q&A. You can see the red circle on the screen right now reminds us of where to find the Q&A box on our screen. That's where I'd love it if you put questions for the panelists. We have 4 panelists with us today, and the breadth of projects is really amazing. So I would love to give you additional opportunities to engage with these folks. They've obviously learned a lot through their experiences. If you put your questions in the chat box, unfortunately, we won't see it. So please do put your questions to the panelists in the Q&A box, which you see on the screen we have now is circled to show you what it looks like. And we'll be monitoring that and pick up some of the questions at the end of this. So let's begin. Many of you know that that Scale is designed to support research, capacity strengthening, knowledge sharing for partners of USAID's Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance. And the purpose of Scale is really to strengthen the impact, sustainability, and scalability of agriculture, natural resource management, and livelihood activities, both on and off farm livelihood activities, and really looking at emergency and development settings. So it's a big space, but it's really about that capacity building and strengthening and research of all of you folks. So the Scale Creative Green Adaptation Awards were really created to highlight all this great adaptation work that is happening around climate issues. So with COP26 being so much in the press these days, we wanted a fun way to show that, to highlight all this great work that is being done out there. And many of you saw the video contest. We had loads of entries. We were really happily surprised by the video contest, by how many entrants we got for the video contest. And the process then was that we had the technical committee for Scale, that's made up of the different BHA partners of Scale, as well as a donor panel who selected the awards that you see. You can see the award categories there. And we also had a People's Choice Award, which many of you may have voted in. We had one entrant who did so well in so many of the categories that they actually, we couldn't ignore it. We had to include them as an honorable mention. So we have 5 stories that we're talking about today. I hope you all saw the video clips that we're talking about, and that's what drew you here in the first place. If you didn't, I promise we will share them at the end of this webinar as well. So let me start out with introductions. We've got 5 of our winner representatives that I want to introduce today. First, I'd like to introduce Musa Umaru Abdullahi from the WADATA project, which is implemented by Save the Children in Niger. WADATA is designed to build resilience for chronically vulnerable households, and it won the award for technical excellence in an emergency setting. This intervention focused on the recovery of pastoral land through the construction of half moons to hold moisture into the soil, and then reseeding with forage seeds as part of a food for work activity that helped youth stay in the community during the lean season. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Christine Yamba Yamba from the Nambola project of Solidaridad in Zambia. Nambola is the winner of the Award for Technical Excellence in a Development Setting. And the project promotes the use of indigenous practice to improve the fertility of the soil and increase animal productivity, as well as creating an app for cattle grading that can then be used both as a marketing tool and also as a management tool. Anora Atapatu joins us from Berendina Micro Investment Company, and they are the winners of the Donor's Choice Award. So well done there. It's hard to impress donors. BMIC identified financing solutions in Sri Lanka that could help contribute to waste reduction on dairy farms, and also to increase the availability of biogas, so an alternative energy source, in rural areas. Walter Quartahari is the president of the ECA Amarakeri, and this program, implemented with Care Peru, created a framework to balance economic development through the nut value chain, the nut sector, with environmental protection of the Amarakeri Communal Reserve in Peru. And this project was the winner of the People's Choice Award. So many of you may have voted for them during the voting period. And finally, we're joined by Rado Ravungiarevelo. I will get it right, Ravungiarevelo, from the Maharo DIFSA, which is implemented by CRS Madagascar. This DIFSA works with youth to gather climate data, such as temperature and rainfall, and aims to measure community resilience to specific shocks so that they can prepare and make climate smart decisions. The platform used is called Mira, and it is the GCAA honorable mention that I spoke about. So great, let's start talking to our panelists. We're going to start with you, Christine, and Nambola. So Christine, something unique about Nambola is that it's really built on local knowledge and local traditional practices. How did that change, that approach? How did that change the way, from the way Solidaridad normally does your work?
Greetings, everybody. As usual, as a development program, we went in thinking that we know what to give to the farmers or what information we should be giving them. And as we started talking and presenting technical issues, the farmers then started talking about things that they had done in the past. We're talking about rotational grazing. And they start talking, explaining to us how the animals were moved from this area to that area in the course of a period. And then we had issues where they were talking about how the traditional leaders oversee. So what basically happened in the long run is that we then realized that, yes, we had the technical information from books and all, but we were going in a community that could actually interpret most of the things that we were saying from a traditional point, and that they actually had been putting some of these practices in place. And what is interesting also is that after our first meeting with them and a visit to one of the other farms that was practicing, we went back and found that the traditional leadership had actually taken the reins, and they had developed rules and regulations, how everything was going to work. And they also had put up a traditional court. So what it meant is that if anybody doesn't abide by what they had agreed on, which is rotational grazing, no cutting of trees, manuring the field, no fires, then they actually got a fine and was taken to the traditional court. So this changed us in the point that we usually go to communities thinking we know. What we have learned is we should go to communities and listen to them and hear them and hear how they organize themselves. And that way, I think we'll be better in helping them, and we'll also get some information from them. So it has been quite an interesting, and still is an interesting, and we've also taken it to other areas. And it's so amazing what information you can get if you just sit to listen.
That's great. Great. Such a great reminder to start with listening, really, because that was what your successes were built around. Thanks, Christine. Anora, I love a good finance program. Anora, there we go. It's great to see you. Anora, remind us why climate-aware financing is so important.
Thank you, Carrie, for the kind, nice introduction that you have made about me. First of all, let me thank the SCALE project and the team for giving us this opportunity to showcase one of our good work that we have done in Sri Lanka to the global community. And we are very much proud about this award, of course. As you said, sort of making donors happy. It's not that easy task. Huh? It's good that we have been able to do that. And now I also would like to say that, you know, this award adds to our count of awards to 4 in this year. We have got 2 other global awards and also 1 local award. Altogether 4 awards for our organization this year.
Wow.
Then let me go to your question. In fact, the financiers, yes, very important people in the whole basically development arena, and the climate change, basically whether it is due to global warming or unfavorable weather conditions. One of the key factors for that such a situation is these type of man-made initiatives. It could be a development program, it could be a business enterprise, and these initiatives can be managed well to make it environmental friendly. It's the best that we can do. Why it is so important is that usually the such projects usually look at the economic returns, and sometimes these economic returns are looked at the cost of environment, and that is where this importance of the financiers to look at the climate awareness. And secondly, the financiers in those projects are the most influencing people, because they provide resources, and they are in a position to bring in whatever the covenants or any conditions, guidelines to ensure that environmental aspects are looked into. And therefore, it is also a factor that the importance of financiers coming in the climate aware decision making. And when it comes to our own work, working with the small enterprises, and in the globe, in the world, as far as I know, about 90% of businesses are micro and small enterprises. And if the microfinance organizations like us are well conversant about environmental aspects and it is being considered, then what a nice world that we can make. And finally, in fact, you know, these small ones will become the larger ones tomorrow. And it is easier to make environmental concern at the small stage, like our childhood. Right? Yeah. And therefore, there are also financiers come in very crucial role I think they can play. And finally, what I want to tell you is the financial institute should consider not only about profit, but all 3 P's: profit, people, and planet in equal weightage.
That's
Hope
such
I
a
have
great,
given
such a great way to think about the profit, people, and planet. I love that. I love that framing. Thank you, Anora. Walter, I wanted to bring a question to you. Walter, your ECA Amarakeri works with 10 different communities, and you're trying to balance both the development and the ecological preservation. How do you manage to keep all these different interests and all these different groups satisfied, happy as you try to balance these different important elements?
Gracias, buenos días. Gracias, Walter Cartewari de la ECA Maracay. Y respecto de nuestro trabajo, se basa principalmente, es una nueva experiencia en el Perú, donde se unen pueblos.
Where we unite the indigenous communities with the state so that we can administer this protection of the natural areas. And I believe that
C'est important pour pouvoir administrer.
from my experience in Peru, this union makes that we can have a contract of administration for an indefined time, and we have because we have very clear roles, and our role is administering, conserving the area, including maintaining, conserving, and protecting the important lakes and rivers, and also generate the opportunities of this development. And in this way, at times is a bit difficult to speak about conservation because all of us, we understand, and it's worse in some of our communities, how conservation, we look at it as a threat, conservation is not total, but it's because these concepts change with time, and have made conservation and development need to go hand in hand. Conserving is not touching, but it's leveraging on the resources, and we base on that, and we have realized what kinds of benefits that will come from conservation. It's like we give a change to our concepts, not to look at a forest as wood, as firewood, not as furniture, but as something that is live, is living, something that will give us opportunities for us and also to the entire humanity. And also we implement a program of economic activities that are sustainable, guaranteeing at least 10,000 USDs. We have some communities which have more investment of more than 50,000.
Actividades como turismo, reforestación, cultivos de plátano, cultivos ancestrales, el tema de piscigranja, y no solo como un tema comercial, sino también por el tema de la seguridad alimentaria, porque nuestros ríos están contaminados, ¿no? Entonces, en base a eso, las comunidades hemos ido cambiando los conceptos y hacer y trabajar en soluciones basadas en la naturaleza, con estos conceptos de adaptación, mitigación, resiliencia, ¿no?
Thank you, Walter. That's a great response, and I think we can see all the different elements in there. It's a challenge. Musa, I also think that you took Wadata took on a really a big challenge. You brought climate adaptation techniques to an emergency setting. Now, to me, that seems really ambitious. And some people might even say it's too much to take on both emergency response and climate adaptation. But from your experience, do you think it's something we should be looking at more?
Merci beaucoup, Kari, et merci beaucoup pour tous les organisateurs de cet événement. Et Wadat aussi vous remercie des prix qui a été remis à Wadat pour le cadre de cette activité, de cette adaptation. Et ce prix va nous permettre d'aller à l'échelle pour entamer les autres communes d'intervention et servir aussi la communauté qui est dans la même situation pareille. Donc, comme vous l'avez souligné, donc, ça n'a pas été facile parce que Wadat a intervenu dans les zones agro-pastorales où la communauté vit de l'agriculture et de l'élevage. Malheureusement, avec les effets des changements climatiques, comme vous voyez avec nous, les ressources naturelles sont tellement dégradées, la production agricole n'a pas bien donné, et aussi la production fourragère n'a pas encore bien donné. Donc, si rien n'est fait en urgence, donc, la communauté risquerait de se plonger dans une insécurité alimentaire. Et d'où notre intervention au niveau de notre commune d'intervention, Mazamni, où nous avons, avec la communauté, identifié les sites pastoraux où leurs pâturages, où leurs animaux pâtirent, et nous avons fait des planifications communautaires passe-parties, et ensuite définir les conventions locales pour identifier les règles de gestion locale pour qu'ils puissent améliorer la diversité, la biodiversité de leurs terres pastorales. Parce qu'au cas où la production agricole n'a pas donné, l'urgence et l'assistance du programme ODATA avec les vivres, ça a beaucoup aidé la communauté à faire face à ce qui était arrivé cette année par rapport à la production. Parce que je vous donne comme information, notre zone d'intervention, c'est une zone qui est hostile aux effets des changements climatiques. La pluie ne tombe pas en grande quantité, ce qui fait que la communauté est tellement exposée. Notre intervention a permis de réhabiliter et de, vous voyez vous-même à travers les images, les superficies qui ont été réhabilitées avec les fourrages qui est là pour les bétails, parce que si la production agricole n'a pas donné, les bétails aussi n'auront pas quoi brouter. Donc, c'est difficile pour la communauté. Donc, cette activité va leur permettre aussi de faire face à ces différents chocs. Par exemple, là où on a mis en défense, la communauté s'est organisée à couper les fourrages au moins 3 fois pendant la saison des pluies et les conserver. Et après, ils vont essayer de les revendre quand ça va devenir cher et aussi ça va leur permettre de créer des banques céréalières qui peuvent les supporter en cas d'urgence, en cas de ce genre de situation, même si en absence de projet d'urgence. Donc, la communauté a quelque chose pour faire face au changement climatique. Donc, voilà ce que je vais intervenir dans ce sens. Merci, Kari.
Thanks, Musa. Once again, it's that story of listening to the community and you know, kind of being where they are instead of coming in as the experts, which we often find ourselves doing. Rado, I want to turn to you. CRS's work is on this project is just getting started, and maybe we can see your there we go. I'm sorry, it's me who didn't have your picture right in front of me. CRS is just getting started on this project, I think, although parts of it have been running for a while. Tell us how you plan to learn and adapt and as the project progresses.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kari, for this question. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to warmly thank the public, the donor panel and the SCALE team for recognizing the merit of our approach, even if this is at this stage of planning for community-based innovation, as Kari said earlier. Indeed, that is just start and part of a development project called Maharu, a disaster food security activity implemented in Madagascar by CRS. All DEFSAs across the world have the opportunity to perform and refine and implement here, which means that we are allowed to learn from initial implementation and adapt based on our initial findings. And throughout the life of activity, this is primarily an innovation for collaboration with community members, participants of the project, a learning process for us and the community, and as well as support for better adaptation led by community at community level. It means as well that we had the opportunity to learn from participants' extensive experience on the local context and identify their primary needs. in regions facing episodic drought, it is mainly to initiate better preparedness led by those affected by shocks. Experience shows that early warning system is functional at community level only if its members are involved in the process. In our intervention zone, we perform a development activity in an emergency context, and we need to tailor our approach to ensure we respond to immediate needs and initiate preparedness practices and behaviors for an early recovery. This innovative approach based on youth-led climate data collection and analysis for informed decision-making in extreme vulnerable community in southern Madagascar will be implemented through the MIRA platform that has been tested and implemented at community level since 2018 for COVID impact analysis and through security evaluation for informed decision-making. The goal of this new adaptation of MIRA is to assess feasibility of community-based early warning system and how to use information and technologies as well as local knowledge to better adapt to change in climate pattern to better tailor development interventions in arid zone. The process presented here and its steps is as well an iterative approach, and each phase will be evaluated to better adapt for the next stage. We are here dealing with slow onset shock, and for an early warning system to be effective, we need to build on community member capacities, competencies, and also rely on existing information, then adapt actual and future approaches. Indeed, slow onset means time for analysis, and during at least 2 to 3 cultural seasons, we will learn from experience and adapt for the next season. This means as well, and this is a promise, that you all through scale will be informed regularly on the progress of our early warning system activity. Thank you. Over to Kere.
Great. Thank you, Rado. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and ask a couple of questions of the whole panel. And if I could have the panel all turn their pictures on so we can see your faces. It's so much nicer to talk to, people. So Musa, Walter, Anora, Christine, if we can get your, there's Christine. And Walter as well. It'd be great to get your picture. Who are we missing? Do I have everybody? I have all my, I got all my panelists now. Great, thank you. So, one of the stories that we've heard a lot from you is about how important it is to hear the voice of the community. But the reality is there are always those people in the community whose voice is harder to hear. Sometimes it's women, sometimes it's youth, sometimes it's a particular ethnic group. What is your advice for getting those maybe softer voices included in the conversation and so that we can hear them and build around their needs as well? Who would like to answer that one? Christine, go ahead. We'll do Christine and then we'll do Musa.
Okay. What we did with our community is we respect that the men have a certain advantage and all. But as we started presenting and talking to the community, we then also started bringing out what is it that the women do, who does the weeding, who does this. So we know already some of the activities that the women do. So you bring them out and ensure that the community then sees the need for them to be done. And that's the importance of the women and the youth to do some of those things. When we started introducing the digital platform, the cattle grading app and all, we then tried to ensure that the youth are the ones who pick it up, because we know that giving some of the tools to the elderly or all might be a bit difficult for them to learn how to use them. So you find that within the community, yes, the younger generation are the ones who have run with that tool. And as we develop more tools going in there, they're the ones who are picking them up. But as much as possible, we've also tried to ensure that the women have their own businesses. And the community has then begun to realize that if the women can have some businesses that they are running as them and bring something to the table and to the household, it is very helpful. So you find that we have reached a situation where everybody's involved in almost everything. The only thing that we know is the cattle is overseen by the men. The women can own cattle, but they cannot sell the cattle without the men's authority.
Yeah.
That
Well,
one
the
we've
norms are
respected
always
and
going to
led.
stay in place, aren't they? Yeah. Right, Musa, go ahead. You also had an answer for us.
Merci beaucoup, Kari.
Thank you very much, Kari. I would like to explain how we were able to associate women and the youth in our projects, whether it's on matters of advising on things that we are also able to do. So first of all, we organized a community consultation meeting, and we formed focus groups, specific focus groups, women groups on the side, youth groups on the side, men's group on the side, and all these groups were listened to individually to be able to collect the needs of each group. And that is what allowed us to see up to what point the youth were marginalized in the community, because a group of women had their own groups and there was no taboo. So it's the same work that we did with the men, and that is how we intervened, and we were able to ask them what was their most immediate need, and this is how we were able to adapt our interventions to make sure that the women and the youth are not marginalized, and we have to listen to them because they also have their own difficulties. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Musa. Rado, I think you also wanted to respond to this one.
Yes, thank you, Kerry. Actually, according to UNFPA, in Madagascar, youth represent about 64% of the population. So they are the future of the country. It is not just including them in our approach, but have them lead the local development with strong support from us at the beginning, considering the situation here. Youth in particular here are seeking for competencies and capacities, and we just need to be intentional in including them in our, actually in their development activities. Thank you.
Good point. I like that. We keep calling them our development activities, but the reality is it's their development activities as well. Walter or Anora, did you want to provide any responses on that?
Yes, Carrie. Yeah, you know how we basically we have done is in fact in microfinance the majority of clients are women, and therefore anyway we are targeting largely women. But when it comes to the investments in environmental projects, one approach that we have done was we have basically got a greater level of education about the benefits for those particular segments. Like for women, you know, what type of benefits that they can get, because they will get cooking gas, and they will get fertilizer for their home gardening, or even to sell out, and then they will save time from whatever firewood collection for their energy needs, which will help them to spend more time with the family and also make income for the family. And that type of sort of giving them information and educating them about the benefits that they can get. And when it comes to youth, of course, we don't have much experience, but something I think, you know, when you're going forward, we should do is we should try to bring for them to know the benefits that they can get in terms of their objectives. Youth usually look at employment, and they are looking at further education, and those are, what benefit from the environmental projects that they can derive as a separate segment of the society.
Great. Thanks, Anora. Walter, I know your project also had made a big effort to include women. Do you have anything you want to share from that experience? So I'm not sure if the translation is working right now for Walter. Maybe if someone from Scale could
Señor Walter, ¿me puede escuchar?
that question. So again, let me ask all of you. This is a question again to all of you. So many people are going to want to replicate the work that you've been doing, and you've all faced different challenges. But if you could go back in time and give one piece of advice to yourself, what would be the one piece of advice that you would have to someone who is trying to do the kind of work that you have done in your project?
Can I?
Rado, and then Anora?
Sure. So my piece of advice is that we do need to drop the old approach of top-down development projects with all our expertise and opinions of what should community members do for their own development, and instead rely on community members that have been there for a long time, know the context better than us, and more importantly, they are certainly seeking for their own development more than us. Our role as development agents is to work with them for their own development, not to impose our views. We do have to focus on that, and when they see the benefit, they will replicate it without us and without our support. And that's, I believe, is the most important aspect. Thank you.
Right. Anora.
Yes, it is also related to previous answer. Of course, what I want to stress here is the ownership. The beneficiaries or clients, whoever you call, the terminology used, they should have the ownership. That is what in our innovation is also more about. We did not provide the full funding for the intervention, and it was basically 30% or 35%. 35% has to come from the beneficiary, and the rest only came from donor or some other source. And in going forward, we want to increase that contribution, financial contribution. Then only the beneficiaries will see the ownership into that and have a long-term sustainability out of that. And also they won't come into an investment if they don't see a benefit out of that.
Right.
And therefore, they're basically getting ownership and getting contribution from them in various ways, not only in labor or material inputs, but in financial terms also, if possible.
That ownership issue that it's kind of a thread that's running through everything. Christine, did you want to add either add to that, or your own piece of advice that you would give yourself?
Maybe I'll start with just saying Nambola means appreciating the past. And that's the name that they gave to the program when we asked them to give it their traditional name. Basically, what is important, and as most of my colleagues have said, ownership is very critical. If they don't own it immediately after you leave, you find that there's really nothing there. So if they can own the problem, own the interventions, then you go in as a technical advisor where they need you, then you know that the sustainability of that program is going to be there. and just also understanding and integrating all the community members, from the women to the men to the youth, and seeing how they can all work together. And this helps. I know. I think that's what I would say. Thank you.
I think that's such an important point, Christine, that these are complex issues. I mean, Musa, it's a bit the question that I had for you around, you know, adding one more level of complexity when we are trying to add environmental issues into an emergency context. I want to do it. I think it's the right thing. And maybe it makes a difference what kind of emergency it is. But it takes a lot. And I think this ownership element is one that we keep struggling with. I think people are trying, but we keep struggling with how to meaningfully engage, how to bring ownership to the communities in this very complex environment. So sorry, Musa, I that was a long response to you, but I do want to hear, what advice would you give yourself?
Okay. Merci beaucoup, Carrie. Conseil que je peux
Like I already said, we consulted the community first, and you have to consult the community first because, you know, in this emergency context, the community is in need of cash or alive. So when you come with cash, it will work. When you come with something that sustains life, it will work. So when they need cash, if you come with cash and the local market is low, then the community will be able to sustain themselves and they will take ownership of that project. And when this project is over 1 year, for example, because the duration of this project was only 6 months in Niger, and the seasons are also short, it's about 6 months. So the community will try to plant, if there is water, they will want to plant during those 6 months, and they will take ownership because they will try to grow these crops and to harvest them and to keep these crops that when the market is a bit more expensive, they can be able to dispose them and get money from it. So we are trying to encourage them to be able to have activity during the dry period.
Right. Thanks, Musa. I'm going to pivot to a question that we got from our Q&A, and please do put questions in the Q&A chat. I wanted to ask if Suzanne, could you give us there? She's just posted it. So thanks for that, Suzanne. Except it moved. Sorry, I wanted to read out the Spanish question. If you, to Walter, this is a question from the audience. If you could just explain the process of political initiation that ECA has. So how you were working with the partners a little bit more. That's the same question that's in Spanish in the chat for those who are interested.
Sí, si hablas de la incidencia, un poco, tenemos nosotros un plan.
You are talking about political initiation. Yes, we have a plan. Sí.
Can you? I think the question from the audience was, can you tell us more about that plan?
Ya. Mira, el proceso de incidencia que tenemos.
The process of initiations that we have from the start is the work and the union synergies between the state and the communities. And this model of administration of the ancestral territories that now are protected areas, natural protected areas, there is a contract of what you need to understand the roles and functions that are not delegated, that are there between the state and the natural communities. Two, we have done the process of strengthening of our capacity building, just like saying we continue bettering our knowledge so that we can be prepared with better decision making, and we articulate better because this articulate work has also been acknowledged sometimes at national, international, local levels. We have prizes from Equatorial 2019, which is also linked to the green list, and now we have the prize of scale, which also helps us to visualize and also to meet our institutional objectives under the natural communities, native communities. We have reached many spaces with the climatic change. For example, the scope where we dealt also with the issue of COVID, and also we have what we have done in the past, which also highlights our what in a context of a proposition of an climatic ambition, which is a counter proposal which has this focus, territorial focus that is holistic, which does not only acknowledge the ecosystem services, but also the ancestral knowledge and the ancestral formation. This is the context that we have been working, and also we have worked with the structure of work, and we have the women, the theme of gender, and also in particular the indigenous woman, which is a bit a weak theme in our work. We are forming our communities. We always say that we pass through a protest. The indigenous people, sometimes we protest, we extend the hand, but now we are bettering our styles, because we are saying that now we are passing through the process of protest to proposition, and proposition to action, and that is where we are continuing with the reactions in terms of sustainable economic activities, and is the way we need to continue to help our communities. The funds need to reach directly to the indigenous communities. We just not go with new activities, but we continue with what has been there, and we can also better the level of life in the communities. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Walter. Thank you. Yeah, a lot there. And we keep hearing the same themes of building on the indigenous knowledge. And I want to ask, and this, I think this may end up being our last question. So just as our last question, the balance, how do, Anora, you were talking about, I'm going to get it wrong, people, planet, and profit. Did I get it?
Yeah.
It's close. So, but
Maybe.
it's a balance, isn't it? How do you feel, when someone comes to you with a potential business they want funded or financed support for, again, microfinance support, it's a loan, not a grant, but how do you evaluate that balance? How should we as aid and development actors, how should we be looking at that balance?
Kerry, I did not get your question properly. Can you explain it bit, please?
Absolutely. Yes, of course. So in this work, we're often trying to balance job creation or economic development with environmental goals, right?
Yeah.
What are the tips for doing that? What are the things we need to keep in mind as we create that balance?
Yeah. Okay. One basically aspect is anyway, you know, in microfinancing, in enterprise development, the first things come out is the making income and also creating employment. And something we have to do is to assess the impact that it could make on the environment. It could be a positive environment, sometimes it could be a negative environment.
Okay.
What the MFI has to look at is that if there is a negative impact, how it can be mitigated. And there should be some ways to do that. And if there is a positive impact, how it can be further enhanced.
Yeah.
And that is the angle that we should look at. And but it is costly, it is not that easy, and it may not be required for all the enterprises that you support, but you have to choose what makes best impact.
And I think from an aid perspective, we have to think about what does that mean for the reporting that we do. And we need donors to buy into that assessment in terms of recognizing that sometimes there are trade-offs. To do something well can be more expensive or take longer. Christine is nodding, and I know she wanted to add to this. So go ahead, Christine. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I think most of the time when we are putting proposals together and we're talking to communities, we've usually got preconceived measurements within our projects and all. And the battle that usually is there is, what have I found within the community that they can do and that they are willing to do? And what do I have that I promised the donor that we were going to achieve? So there has to be, you have to start creating that balance between the two. So getting the donor to understand that, yes, while we thought this was the way, which was possibly a technical approach, if we look at the indigenous knowledge and we listen to what they are looking at, we might have to, yes, take the same steps, but possibly take them a bit slower, change a few things and all, because it is only when they are fully a part of it that they own it and they own the changes. Other than that, it was a Solidaridad came and did this. This other organization came and did that. Oh, who did this? Oh, no, those are remnants of that program. So it is not them, it is not theirs. So that, I think, for me, has really been the thing that has hit me in terms of when you're working in development. Thank you.
Oh, I want to end there. I mean, that's, for me, that's the that's it, right? I mean, we've got to look at this at a different way and recognize that it's going to require changes from us as well. Anyone want to give a last thought? Musa, give us your last thought here.
My last word is to remind all the organizations in terms of adaptation. Before starting, you need to define the quotas of women and youths so as you can create a balanced group.
Great. And Rado has put in the chat, a reminder that there are donors, and USAID is one of them, that are being flexible and allowing for those changes to take place, which I think is a really important underpinning to what Christine was saying. With just 2 minutes left in this webinar, and I do like to keep to time, I can't take any other questions, but I really want to say thank you and congratulations to all of you. I mean, you caught our attention. You caught the donors' attention. You caught the technical committee's attention, and you caught the public's attention. We had 3,000 people vote. And that level of engagement is just, well, it wasn't what we were expecting at all. So everybody who applied for the award, I think, can feel good about the fact that the story is starting to get out there. The need for these adaptations is recognized, and your good work is being seen by people. So that's fantastic. So thank you for all of the work that your organizations are doing. Keep up the good work. Scale wants to continue learning and sharing the work that you're doing. Please, so part of that is the technical briefs that'll be posted soon. I think Ashton is going to put the links to the videos and the infographics and the technical briefs. They should all be in one link there, and we'll put that in the chat for you. Fantastic. Thank you, Ashton. And thank you to my panelists. This was a diverse group and a little bit of a technical challenge, but it's been great. It's been great hearing your stories and hearing your perspectives. And I look forward to everything that is to come with this group. Thank you.
Thank you.